Thank you. So, very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Praveen Karn. I work for an organization called Spark Minda Group. I take care of the corporate social responsibility vertical for this organization. Today, I would like to welcome each one of you in this period of COVID-19, where we can find out a nice way to join in a conference which is through technology and electronic conference. And thank you so much, Manoj, Priya, and the entire team of Socio Story for setting it up. We are going to talk about the draft amendments proposed for Section 135, which is Corporate Social Responsibility by Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And we'll talk on it, the amendments which has been there, which is open for the public views and suggestions, recommendations till 28th of March. So first, I'd like to tell you about the Socio Story. Hope am I audible to everyone? Prajwal, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
All right. So about Socio Story. Socio Story is a social community platform where social change makers can share their tale and journey of toil, grit, and leadership towards achieving their social goals for creating better India. It features and gives platform to unsung social change makers spread positive news, celebrate their success, showcase and positive social impact work of lesser known or unvoiced change makers. So wonderful, Manoj, Priya, and the entire team of Socio Story for setting up, and our good wishes for this unique initiative that you have started. Thank you for registering, all of you, 189 registrations. Most of you are live now. You are a part of this conference. So we have people from Tata Trust. We have the development leaders from Kailash Satyarthi Foundation, Creasil Foundation. We have ILNFS, Akshay Patra, Maruti, MetLife, JK Paper, Terry University, Ajim Premji University, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Birla Institute of Technology, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. There's a big list that I can see here. DLF is there, Piramal, Tata Power. So many of you are there. I have a long list, but I don't have that much time that I would like to, take all of your names. So thank you so much for joining in here. And with me, I have my co-panelist, an esteemed panel we have, who would be talking about the proposed amendments here. So first, I would like to give you an introduction of Dr. K.K. Upadhayay. Dr. Upadhayay, we have talked in a lot of forums, but this is unique for us that we are talking first time in a unique way in this situation of COVID-19, and we are keeping ourselves engaged also, that we are not going out and we are keeping other 200 people occupied with this productive way of engaging them on a discussion with a very significant subject, Section 135 amendments. So Dr. K.K. Upadhayay is a seasoned development professional with over 3 decades of experience across corporate, non-profit, government. He is pioneered in several innovations, successful models that exist in development sector today, including mother dairy, fruits, vegetable, Safal. He's an expert with he's an expert with IICA, and lot of things he has done. He was an ex-head CSR at FICCI. I'll also have Noshir Dadrawala sir. Noshir ji, you are the Chief Executive Officer of Center for Advancements of Philanthropy. Currently, he serves the national and international boards as a member, Asia Philanthropy Network, which is for Give to Asia. He also is a trustee of India Sponsorship Committee, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Forbes Foundations. Is also appointed by the Planning Commission, Government of India, as a member of an expert group. I have Radhika, my very old friend Radhika has joined us from Washington, DC. Radhika is a global impact leader awarded by prestigious Atlas Cop Fellowship Program. She has worked with UNGC, CAF India, Dr. Reddy's, IIT Delhi. So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining in today. So I start with The key amendments overview. So let's talk that what has been done as far as this amendment is concerned. So in a very brief manner, I would be just talking about the points which are the changes. We all know about the Act. So I'm not going to talk about the Act, the section 135, but the amendments which has been proposed to be incorporated, I would be talking about that. So Rule 4.1 that talks about the CSR activities to be undertaken by the company itself. The company established section 8. That's second provision. Number 3 is about the entity established under the Act of Parliament or state legislature. So a huge round of discussions have been happening about this point because we get to know about the society and the trust, and I'm sure many of my friends would be waiting about getting the responses on it, and will have a question also about it. So that's one. The 3-year track record thing has been omitted as far as this amendment is concerned. So we'll talk on this also. Engaging international organization for designing, for monitoring, for evaluation, capacity building, and for many other purposes. For sure, with the prior approval of the central government. That's the third key point amendment that I can see. There's a role of key, chief financial officer, which has been incorporated here with, and they will ensure the financial management. They will be responsible for it. Certainly, there is a benchmarking about it that the share capital of that company should be at least 10 crore. Then there's another amendment which is about the ongoing projects, the multi-year project, the timelines not exceeding 3 years. So how are we looking at it? How a program or a project for maybe 5 years or 10 years, how would that be addressed? That's a question I'm sure to in the mind of many of you. The annual action plan. Wow, that's a beautiful point where things are being organized in a better manner. The CSR committee has to recommend an annual action plan, has to be approved by the board. The annual action plan will have the list of the projects, the manner of execution, implementation schedule. The timeline also has to be mentioned with this annual action plan, monitoring and reporting mechanism, and impact assessment. But the most important thing which is being introduced is the impact assessment thing. We'll talk in length about it. And of course, initially the admin expenditure which was permitted was 5%, which would be now stretched to 10%, provided that organization has to conduct the impact assessment. There's a provision that if the spending is like 5 crore or more, then this impact assessment would be mandatory. The surplus generated out of CSR has to be transferred to an unspent account. So that there'll be a national account created for CSR in which this money has to be unspent post 31st of March. For this year also, this provision would be effective. And there's a new disclosure format. You can see the format which is prescribed in the draft. So now there's a lot of things in this format that brings a lot of transparency. Pardarshita ki baat ho rahi hai. So good. I mean, I can see there's a lot of good things which is happening, but a lot of questions are also there in the mind of the people. Our participant number is pretty high, and I'm sure I would not take much of the time talking about all this, because I'm sure all of you would have, most of you would have gone through this amendments which is there, and employees could also be a beneficiary if the number is limited up to 25%. So very quickly, looking at the time that we have available, I'll straightforward go to the very first concern and a question. Noshir ji, the entity established under the Act of Parliament would be able to undertake CSR activities other than the company directly. How do you look at this point? A lot of discussions are happening that the societies and the trust would not be allowed to implement CSR projects for the companies. What is your viewpoint on this? Noshir ji, over to you.
Thank you very much. So this particular, let's begin with that. This is still a proposed rule. So, I mean, this has not become law as yet. In fact, we have until tomorrow, which is the 28th of March, to put in our suggestions. We have been for the last several days urging a lot of organizations that might be affected, both companies as well as implementing agencies, which are trust and societies, and who have done a fabulous job so far as implementing agencies, to lodge their protest or suggestions on a link that has been given on the Ministry of Corporate Affairs website. Uh, as things stand right now, because the rules have not been notified, CSR can be done by a company directly. It can be done by its own foundation, which could be either a trust, society, or a Section 8 company, and not necessarily with a track record of 3 years, or an implementing agency, which must be a trust, society, or a Section 8 company, but that must have a track record of 3 years. This is the current position even just now. So even companies have been asking over the last few days that, shall we stop working with trust? The answer is no. Right now, these are proposed rules. If you are already a trust or a society which is doing good work, please tell companies not to panic on this. This is still proposed unless it is notified and a date from which this will come into effect. Right now, trust and societies still qualify. Now, we have to look at the going forward. Assuming that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, despite protests, despite suggestions given to them, think in their heart that they want to go ahead with what they have proposed. And so you need to understand what has been proposed. What has been proposed is that a company can do CSR directly. Directly meaning, here is a company having a factory somewhere. It wants to do things in its neighborhood. It wants to set up a skill development institute or whatever. There's another thing which is also there under the rules, that any assets that you might create out of your CSR funding must also be held in the Section 8 company, not in a trust or in a society. So, but going back to where I started, a company can do this directly. It can do it with organizations that have been set up under Act of Parliament or an Act of State Legislature, or it can do it through a company registered under a Section 8. Now, this also has implications on the company. Lots of companies currently have their own trusts. For example, the Tatas do this CSR work through the Tata Trust, which are not registered as Section 8 company. Mahindra's does it through the KC Mahindra Education Trust. Birla's ditto, Godrej ditto, and there is a whole bunch of other organizations. So this is going to affect also companies. And this is why we are trying to wake up a lot of companies also on the implications, because they seem to think that they will be able to find organizations that are registered under Section 8. What they fail to understand is that it might affect their own foundations. So right now, what has been proposed is that the company can do CSR directly. It can do it through its own foundation only if it is a Section 8 company, or any other NGO which is registered only as a Section 8 company, or of course any institution which is registered under an Act of Parliament or the state legislature. This is what is proposed. So if this gets notified, and when this will get notified, we do not know. One hopes that there will be a dilution. There will be enough representation made by the civil society organizations, as also industry bodies like CII, FICCI, HHM. They should put their act together and do something in this regard, in my opinion. I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Noshir, for bringing in absolute clarity about it. And I'm sure my friends from the development sector would be very much convinced and would be optimistic. You have done a great, wonderful jobs in the past, and I'm sure there's nothing to panic about. I was speaking to a couple of my friends in various trade associations. So CII is also going to go with some kind of recommendation about it. My organization, Spark Minda Group, has been working with a lot of trusts and societies, and we have excellent experience working with them. So I'm sure something fruitful, something rational is going to be notified ultimately. And moreover, Noshir, I just have one query. I was looking at the society and the trusts and their registration. They also fall under the Act of Parliament. So how would you interpret this ones?
This is one of the first things that I thought about 2-3 weeks ago, that this could be a drafting error, because let us say the Maharashtra Public Trust Act is under a state legislature, but we have made some discrete inquiries with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and whatever we heard from certain higher ups, for various reasons, we cannot name anyone over there, but they seem to tell us that the mood of the ministry is to deal only with Section 8 companies, because I think they just want to keep this within the Indian Companies Act. So Section 8 companies are also registered. There's another bit that you need to understand, that under Section 135, it covers every company which is covered under the Indian Companies Act.
Yes.
And who has a turnover profit. Now, of course, the Section 8 company doesn't have profit, it has income. But there are genuine cases over the last 4 years where Section 8 companies having a turnover of more than certain amount, or definitely what they deemed as profit, although that is only income of more than 5 CR, have been told that they must follow the norms of CSR. So now think of a situation where a company will be giving money to a Section 8 company and it will cross the 5 CR magic line of profit according to MCA, then they again have to do something about CSR. Think about the stupidity of the whole legislation.
So let's look towards the affirmation, and I'm sure this will end up with something really good with Manoj. I'm sure you would also be sending all these key observations for today's discussion to the ministry so that they can take an appropriate action while notifying this. KK Upadhayay sir.
Hi.
Sir, you have seen the entire sector growing, the CSR law, the development sector in totality, in your experience. So how do you look at this 3-year track record thing, which has been omitted?
Sure.
So, I mean, see, initially the viewpoint was that if there's a 3-year track record thing, then it ensures the credibility of the organization and things like that. How do you look at this point?
Let me take you a little back. When the law was in the process, when we were trying to make the law, the law was not meant to be restrictive or prescriptive. By which I mean, the process that time thought of was very simple. Let's have a committee. Committee will have a policy. They will have 2%, and then they come into a public domain to tell what about is there. It had type of flexibility, and the onus was on the corporate culture to change the corporate culture to accountability, environment, and involve all the stakeholders, and also to introduce management and innovative practices into social sector. That was the basic idea when the whole process started. But now with time, it looks like that flexibility is being compromised. There are companies, flexibility that time meant it was companies can work together, they can work with non-profit, and the key words we used to take was reputational damage, like the way it was supposed to be, and also name and shame. That's what we used to call it. That's what the process will be. That's why we had IICA, National Foundation for CSR portal. Idea was to monitor and impact assessment through this process. But I find now with this new law, the 3-year thing has been compromised. I think that should not be. What we used to explain in our presentations, comply or explain, that is being changed to comply, explain, and deposit. I think it should not be compromised, and also using it as a resource gap filling, because I personally feel a lot of compromise have been made in terms of using it for that's what as a chamber we were saying earlier also, have 2% taxation. You don't need to make 2% philanthropic, and the unspent accounts also go in that direction. So I personally feel it should be there, but though at present it is not there.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhayay. And I have heard you talking always not only about the 2%, but about the rest 98% also. That how is that been spent?
Yes.
So with that, I now come back to my friend Radhika. Radhika, the engagement of the international organization for designing, monitoring, evaluation, capacity building, and all that, would you call it an introduction to the Indian NGO arena for the international donors as far as corporate social responsibility is concerned? Radhika.
Yeah, first of all, thanks everyone, and thank you for the lovely audience who are very active. So I think there's a lot of discussion points happening around this proposed amendment, which I think Noshir very rightly stated that these are amendments, proposed. So they're seeking feedbacks right now. And this is a very important stage of giving a feedback. So number one, yes, I do see international organizations, for example, in the US, it's 501 with various categories to enter, because already there are NGOs working in India where head offices are there in diverse countries, right? So we have to accept that fact. Keeping that in mind, I would like to connect this aspect to the inclusion of Section 8. They go hand in hand together. So while you're saying, let's have international organizations coming on board, the provision or the recommendation that people can give to this particular amendment is that, look, you can include the Section 8 companies, but do not exclude the trust and the societies, or give us a clarification for the state legislature's point. The whole exercise today should be, what are the critical recommendations that people across the civil society, across business can give to the government? So there should be an inclusiveness. So while on one hand we can see Section 8 coming in, we can see international organizations coming in, not only just for seeking funds, but this is very critical, how you're monitoring your projects. International organizations can also help in doing impact assessments and designing. Like my own organization, Karn Indian Partners. And the idea is if the presence is directly in India, the engagement is important, because those grassroots level organizations would like to have the local governance processes strengthened. So these were the critical points. And Section 8 companies, I know where it came from, because they were first they were Section 25 and they got excluded. There was a whole lobby of social innovators, the social entrepreneurs, who actually registered themselves as Section 25, which is now the Section 8. And they said that you have not, included us. We are under a category of NGOs. The NGO category is trust, society, Section 8, right? And many more, as Noshir was stating, as per the state's laws. So there should be inclusion. There should be inclusion of international. You have to keep in mind that India is young. You have young entrepreneurs coming into picture. Will be setting up Section 8. So you cannot say that let's exclude Section 8 or let's exclude trust, because it's good to create disruption, but a constructive disruption in the CSR field, as you say.
Very well spoken, Radhika.
It's also a principle. Yeah.
Go ahead. If you want to add something else.
No, I also wanted to say my observation to the amendment was that it's also stopping, and I am going to state a very important line here. And Praveen, you might seek it. I might seek your inputs on it. A lot of companies set up the corporate foundations just to route in the monies also. The overall spend of CSR was just 8,961 or 8,691 crores till now, CSR spend. When the law was made, and when Dr. Upadhayay and Noshir can actually state that, the assumption was 20,000 CRs. So we have to look this in totality. Where is the spend going in? So there were shadow organizations coming up. There are shadow foundations coming up. So we have to look this in totality. We have to focus on what recommendations are you giving to the MCA.
Right. So rightly observed by you, Radhika. So the spending was certainly like close to 9,000 crores couple of years before. If you look at the report of, if I refer NGO Box report, it has reached close to some 15,000 crores in last year. It is expected to be somewhere closer to 20,000 crores, and also MCA disclosed that in last 5 years the spending is close to like 50,000 crores. So yeah, things are going good. Previously, the act was saying that it is only about the disclosure. If you're not spending, that's not a problem. But if you're not disclosing, that's a problem. So therefore, people were disclosing with, of course, with certain erratic, explanations. Also, the companies were disclosing that, yeah, we could not spend because of X reason, but that X reason did not appear to be very logical as far as this context in reality is concerned. So yeah, things are growing up. I would let's say this is in a life stage, and this has a long journey to go. Rightly pointed by you, it's a subject of inclusivity, multi-stakeholdership, and it's not about eliminating someone. It's about including everyone and to go together to reach to the the common objective that we have. Thank you, Radhika. I'm sorry you joined in from US. I'm sure it's a midnight out there, and we kept you wake up. Thank you. I come back to okay, sir. I come back to you. Annual action plan. There's a format which is been prescribed with the draft. The list of the project, the manner of execution, the implementation, the time schedule, monitoring, evaluation, impact assessment, the annual action plan has to be drawn. How are you going to look at it? How is it going to impact in terms of better planning and output with this introduction in the Act?
When we started, the idea was let the corporate, their management skills come into the social sector. Now, what is happening is it's becoming more prescriptive. You do this, this and that. And one other idea which was there at the beginning was that because this is not the core competence of the corporates. So let's bring the core competence of the civil sector into the idea. No, it's becoming more prescriptive. Then the best option is to go to PM fund and other funds which are being prescribed. Even if you see, it started from very beginning. For everything, wherever they find a gap, they rely on the CSR funds, as if CSR funds are more for the use of that gap funding. Otherwise also, if you see, the whole mode was in project mode. We were supposed to implement in project mode, and all these things are covered basically. And corporate know it much better than anybody else. I think it's time to be more prescriptive. It should not be there. And at the same time, it is already a part of, as a management professional, as a development professional, we know this has to be part of it. Oh.
Thank you, KK sir. How do you look at this move that the asset which has been created would be transferred to the Section 8, or the Section 8 actually can own this, asset, the capital items? Yeah.
Because it has a lot of other implications also, which has not taken care of in it. But I personally feel it has a link to when they say everything has to be done through the Section 8 company. It has a link to that. Otherwise, it should not be there.
All right. Thank you. Noshir, I come back to you with a question which the entire development sector talk about. Impact assessment, which is going to be mandatory for a set of organizations who are spending of 5 crore or more. Right. Your views on it?
I have been known for my negative views on impact assessment over the years. In the sense that impact is a term that is least understood by people. Sometimes you do not see impact for even 50 years. What really happens is for any input that you have, there is an output and a possible outcome. For example, you have invested in education. So because of education, there is a certain output and an outcome. But impact is something that can be seen only maybe after a generation. That, I mean, you may have given education to someone and that person at some stage says, I have an education, but I don't have a job. You gave me skills, but I don't have any wherewithal to do anything with the skills. That is a negative impact in terms of, so I think we need to first have a clarity, and this is, I'm going out of my legal sphere to the philosophical aspect of that impact is the most misunderstood and most misused term in this country. There are only consultants, pardon me if there are consultants on this group who feel offended, who will make money on this. If I say more, I'll offend people, so I'm going to keep quiet.
That's a straightforward comment from Noshir, and I'm sure a lot of my friends in the development sector, they're all perplexed about this terminology called impact assessment. But I'm sure this is going to open up a lot of opportunities for the sector to do impact assessments and to actually make the companies understand what is called this impact, and what is this terminology all about. It's not only about doing the job, but it's also about getting the result out of it. May I get some views from Radhika on it? Radhika, how do you look at it? Do you have a different point other than Noshir? You're not audible. You're on mute. You're on mute, Radhika. Unmute yourself first.
Unmute. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm shifting bases. You can see the other part of my house because of the battery. So sorry. Yeah, I'll agree with Noshir. We don't understand impact. This whole action plan that you are trying to see in the proposed amendment talks about the typical thing of project cycle management. Why we do project cycle management is to get an impact. And an impact is not about numbers. What the CSR reports, these which is like those plethora of reports and the annual reports. I mean, I'm still beating my brains over it. I'm an academia person, and we are not writing so many reports, but the companies are writing. NGOs are contributing to that. I don't know why it's bizarre. Why? Because you're just talking about numbers. 176 impacted, 10 geographies touched. That's output. Those are outcomes. Impact, as you rightly stated, it's a journey. It's, for example, you're doing awareness oriented programs. How do you measure the impact? What are the qualitative indicators that you come up with? And the sustainability aspect also, I don't understand, because it's just linked to environment. It's always linked to your ESG, carbon emissions, and so on. When it comes to do something beyond the fence or social aspects, it's zero. They just have numbers. Numbers by itself do not talk about impact. It's just outputs, it's outcomes of a project or an activity. Number of employees engaged for X number of project for Y number of activity is an output or an outcome of a project activity. But how have you engaged the employee over the years, over what activities? What is the improvement that you have brought? If you're talking about employee engagement programs, do you have those qualitative indicators? The diversity issue. And the other is the, the complete community oriented programs. Praveen, you were leading the menstrual hygiene program, and how typically we went into those qualitative indicators of doing focus group discussions. We came up with those qualitative indicators of how it's improvised the health of a woman by re-going to the field again taking those data. We have great number of practitioners, but we do not know how to present or do those qualitative methodology of bringing impact. And you cannot say, it's bizarre to say, you do a 6 months project and hey, I've got this impact. That's a short-term impact. Define the impact and distinguish between your outputs, outcomes, and impact. The climate change or the COVID impact is going to be seen after some months or years, you're already seeing it now, but that's the impact. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm sure all of us would agree to the viewpoint of Radhika and also to Noshir. KK, sir, you want to add something to this?
I personally feel that this word has been, I don't know when it came into the whole existence, it was not there initially. And the way it has been interpreted is very different. I fully agree with Radhika and Noshir. Impact has to be understood still. I think most of us don't understand it the way it should be. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So to my beautiful audience here, another 5 minutes, we'll open it up for questions and answers round. Prajwal, please open the platform for taking questions. But before that, a quick rapid fire with my co-panelists.
Sure.
Anybody who feels like answering can answer just in one line. Employees are also going to be the beneficiaries of CSR. Your views on it. One line.
It is not CSR. Anything that benefits employees is HR. It is not CSR.
The initial
What you do
idea
for your
of-
employees is HR. It's part of your duty as a company to do it.
True. I have a little longer answer. Sorry, I really wanted to say this because I'll tell you, employee engagement, and Noshir, you can add to it, and Dr. Upadhayay, is volunteerism. You know, like this is a learning that I've got from the Atlas score. It's a voluntary initiatives that we are seeing here.
No, but there's a spending provision now going to get into from the CSR part.
Exactly.
Right. I'm all for employee engagement. I'm all for employee engagement. Employees should be encouraged to go out into the field. That is CSR. But making them 25% as beneficiaries of CSR fund is absolute humbug. That is part of your HR duty to take care of your. It should not be
big no from Noshir. And KK sir, how do you look at it?
It should not be there. I
should
fully
not
agree
be.
with Noshir and
yeah, but I think I exert, and I don't know, Praveen, how you look at into it. I'm not saying no to. I'm not going to be no to it. I'm not going to be yes for it. I'm not, and you know, I hate diplomacy. I'm not diplomatic. But think about it. The reflection I'm bringing in. So we have the manufacturing units, and I've worked with few. And what happens internally is it's the fund allocation. So the sustainability and safety teams do go out in the community of manufacturing, key manufacturing units. The issue internally is how the funds get allocated within these departments. I mean, I was of the impression कि, NGOs में होते हैं और तो फिर जाके company में जाके हम funds मांगते हैं CSR के और हमें funds चाहिए होते थे. I was shocked कि internal department allocation भी बहुत important है. You can't call them beneficiaries. That I completely agree with you, Noshir and Dr. Upadhayay. How can employees be beneficiaries of your? वो तो सारा आपका allocation उस पे चला जाएगा. Tick mark. This most important is the word you said, engagement. Engagement. India's if you look at the workplace 2020, people working in the private sector, only 22% feel we are engaged to our job. They just want to leave their jobs.
Point well taken, Radhika.
It's true for the sector.
Point well taken. Employee engagement, yes for that. Spending over the employee, 2 disagreement. 1 partial agreement. Probably I have the veto power
to have to look into
to conclude it. But at the same time, I would leave this question to my audience also to come back to us offline. That how do they look at it, and probably with those viewpoints we can make a recommendation to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. National CSR fund for which an account would be created. How should that money be spent? There is nothing been talked about it. Your views in one line, starting from Noshir.
I think we haven't a clue what they want to do. I think they should have a very clear white paper or a policy on what this national CSR fund is, in what areas they'll be working. Ideally, companies should be just spending on their own. I mean, and it's only if there is some little bit left which they can't. I mean, they could give it to this, but. And sorry if I digress a little more to say, I think in India, we have completely killed the concept and philosophy of CSR. CSR the world over is not a compliance. CSR is something that companies voluntarily do because it is good for the companies. The employees feel good about it. The companies feel good about it. We have reduced CSR to arithmetic. If you have a turnover, net worth, or a profit, set aside 2% and make sure you spend it. If you can't spend it, give it to the government fund. I think that kills the very concept of CSR. It's a social responsibility, not a charity tax. I'm sorry, again, I got carried away.
Do you think that we should use it for COVID-19 purpose, which appears to be one of the most important subjects for redressal right today? If there is something which is unspent, let's let it to go for COVID-19.
I would be happy to, but there are lots of NGOs working on COVID-19. They are the ones who are really going down into the grassroots and doing the work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who are working out there, but you want to provide relief that is already provided under CSR. Disaster relief and disaster management is part of CSR.
All right. My last 1 minute with my panelists right here. Any addition would you like to propose in terms of scope of work in Schedule 8 of Section 135? Anything that you feel like which is left out, which needs to be added?
You mean Schedule 7? You just said Schedule 8.
Yes.
Schedule 7. I think it's pretty
7,
comprehensive if you ask. it is pretty comprehensive if you ask me. But if there are anyone who feels anything is left out, I mean, but I think it's fairly comprehensive.
My view is at least do Schedule 7 properly. I mean, वो list ही बढ़ती जाती है, तो उतना तो कर लो पहले. I mean, what I'm trying to say is the endowment, and it's true for both NGOs and companies. I don't believe in just company bashing or NGO bashing or government bashing. Please understand, CSR endowment fund, you know, or this is a world of collaborations now, and I think it's high time Indians and all of us come together. Climate change, COVID, these are the kind of issues that the world and our future generations are going to deal with. So you need large funds. SDGs is already a failed, you know, a lot of indicators are failed. The only proud that you feel about is that you eradicated polio out of collaboration. That was the only MDG that you achieved, and it was achieved. So let's even talk positive collaborations. If we create co-endowment funds, and if it is monitored well, why not? Let's get those clarity there, because already companies are creating those funds. And one of the critical things that we are missing out is Section 135 always talked about collaboration between two companies. 5 years down the line, I still want to see collaboration between two companies. We tried to do that, but the collaborations are not happening. There is a mistrust. The 5 years, it has become a donor and a beneficiary relationship. It's not become a co-partner relationship. However, NGOs have come up with, NGOs have come together and have built up these funds through the HNIs and through the international organizations who have managed to bring cluster of NGOs like Co-Impact, Rockefeller, you know, like the Promise of Commons project. They are bringing consortiums because you have to work on exponential impact. You cannot work on one project activity, one district, one village, and that's the thing. So let's take, if you want to shake the equilibrium, this is the whole thinking. Narratives have to change now.
Absolutely, point well taken. And SDG 17 talks about partnership for goals.
Yes.
We have not seen many of the projects in India which has collaboratively be taking place in the arena of corporate social responsibility. That is the need of the hour. But Dr. K.K. Upadhayay, are you fine with this Schedule 7 of Section 135, or you would like to further enlarge it?
No, I'm quite fine. It's already quite elaborate. And I think with so many notification, gadget notifications and other this thing, everything, most of the things are covered here.
Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Last 15 minutes we have for questions and answers from my audience. So Prajwal, can you please place some questions which are there? So to my audience, first of all, I again would like to thank all of you for joining in, and sorry for the disturbances, technical goof-ups which is happening in the background, because we all are joining in from our houses. So sorry for that. We would be picking up some of the questions and would be addressing it. If not right here in this platform, offline, we would be answering all the questions which would be uploaded on the Socio Story platform website, and you can get an answer to all your queries. Prajwal, over to you for setting up the questions to us.
Hi, sir. Mr. Neeraj Lal had raised his hand, so I have unmuted him. He'll ask his question now.
Neeraj Lalji.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, good afternoon to all. Wonderful discussion, and this is something that I would have read 10 times but would not have got so much of meaning out of it. Thank you very much, Manoj, for organizing this. I have an observation and a question to the panel. For me, governance is paramount. Okay. In this whole discussion, I believe if we are getting a better governance, then I think the whole discussion is worth. Governance of CSR fund and the implementing agencies, both. So in such a situation, a Section 8 company, if it is an implementing agency and a grant making company, both, if both are governed by one organization, that Ministry of Corporate Affairs, then wouldn't the governance be better? Wouldn't the governance improve? wouldn't the process will be more transparent? And I'm saying so because a Section 8 company and the company both would be governed by Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Against a trust or a society, both would be actually governed by the trustees, but would be reporting into the charity commissioner. So I would like to ask panel's view on what will happen if recommendation remain the same. No change and only Section 8 companies are doing. Wouldn't it be transparent more? Wouldn't the governance of CSR improve? And if governance is the key, why are we discussing all these things? To me, ministry makes reporting online like FCRA and it's detailed. Wouldn't it be a preferred option? Your comments, sir.
Thank you, Neeraj sir. Neeraj sir, you are my alumnus and you are heading the CSR for Arvind Group. So thank you for joining in, sir. Privileged to have you here. May I request Noshir to answer Neeraj sir's question? Noshir sir, wonderful observation. First of all, Neeraj ji.
Neeraj, always a pleasure when you raise these questions, because I know governance is something that you are always passionate about, and so am I. We have to understand the difference between governance, which I believe, and that's a personal, is an internal value of any organization, for profit or non-profit. Governance entails looking beyond what the law requires in terms of transparency, accountability, fairness, human rights issues. There's a whole bunch of things, and that is, to me, that is what governance is. By working only with Section 8 companies, yes, you might be in compliance with the requirements of the Indian Companies Act, which requires certain very stringent compliance, and it's a fairly stringent regulatory regime. But having said that, this is not the answer to good governance, because now again, I'll get controversial here when I say this, that if the Indian Companies Act and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and the Registrar of Companies was so good, how come we still continue to see a lot of corporate scams? So I do not think that the law or the ROC really, it may ensure compliance, and if there is lack of compliance, there are penalties and there might be all kinds of actions that can be taken, but it does not necessarily promote good governance. Good governance is something that comes internally, and therefore I think we need to move towards a world of better self-regulation and self-governance that we need to promote. I mean, why is it that some people respect some companies more than they respect others? Because that's because governance is an internal value. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you. I can see a few questions here on the chat. I am loaded with a lot of questions. If a company can conduct its CSR activities by its own, the company would have to pay to someone. Can this be a society, private trust, or Section 8? Sorry, I'm not able to understand this question.
I think I've understood the question.
Yeah.
What he means is, if you have a private vendor to execute your work, can you do that? Technically, that has been happening over the past 5 years, that companies wanting to do work directly, let us say they want to technically, let us say, plant 10,000 trees in the entire district or the state. But there are no NGOs to do that, neither is its foundation. So they engage a for-profit vendor of service who will say, all right, I will take care of this. I will plant 10,000 trees, but this is going to be my fee for this. And this has technically happened over the last 5 years. Ministry has not raised any questions on that. So this is a possibility.
The question, in the case of amendment happens in the present form, will trust get an opportunity to convert to Section 8 and carry forward the projects or experiences? So,
there is a provision under Section 366 of the Companies Act about merger of trust with companies. But the issue will be in Maharashtra and in Gujarat, where perhaps the charity commissioner may not want to give up his control.
Yeah, yeah.
But in other states, probably, yes, a trust can merge into a company. There are specific sections under the, it's 366 as far as I can remember, which allows for a merger of a trust into a company.
So this is not a question, there's a comment here. I can see CSR is a compliance, philanthropy is voluntary. KK sir, how do you want to respond on it? CSR is compliance, philanthropy is voluntary. KK Upadhayay, I think, is he there? Yeah.
Yeah.
You are kindly unmute yourself, so.
You'll have to unmute.
Yeah.
Assume to a network issue, I believe.
No, there's a mute button which you need to unmute.
Yeah. KK sir, please go ahead.
The mic button.
No, can't hear you.
We can't hear you. We come back to him. Possibly there's some network issue. Can the existing trust or societies be able to register under Section 8 smoothly if amendments remain smoothly? So somebody's, the person who's putting up this question, Gagan, possibly are you willing to get an answer? Possibly the problem related to bureaucracy for re-registrations for Section 8. If this is the question, can we get an answer to this? How do you look at this process as a smoothing process where everything would be incorporated comfortably? Anyone from the panel?
I could answer if you like. So right now, to register a Section 8 company, with the help of a good company secretary, you can possibly do it in about 1.5 months, maximum 2 months. But the bigger worry is about getting your 12A and ADG, and which will take another 4 to 6 months to get your 12A and ADG. And the organization may not qualify for FCRA registration until it is 3 years old. And this can be problematic because if it is a foreign company that you're getting CSR money from, you will have to then wait till you're 3 years old to get your FCRA. So I think certain things will be smooth, others will be problematic.
Radhika, will international organization that may be allowed to design, monitor, and evaluate CSR projects? There are 40 organizations who are listed at Ministry of External Affairs website. Will others be allowed?
Yes, because it clearly states that you need a permission from the central government. Yeah. I think I also would encourage the viewers to go to the MCA website and it's just a 4-page document. It's in a very simple English. You know how government documents are. They have to be written very bureaucratically and simple with less clarifications. It's written there. So it's something they are looking forward to. Section 8, internal organizations, you need a special permission and all that is already there.
All right. It just requires the central government's prior approval.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Dr. Upadhayay, sorry, Noshir, you wanted to add something. Yes.
Anything that is seen as an approval almost becomes like a license. So I don't know how smooth that will be because somebody used the term, how smooth will it be? Only time will tell us whether it's smooth.
Absolutely.
Dr. KK Upadhayay, what is the priority of marketing strategy in Indian CSR?
Oh, I will answer that also after Dr. Upadhayay. This is one of my favorite questions.
Very quickly. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Upadhayay, please go ahead.
I think getting FCRA and others itself is that they have a lot of other problems also. And the NGOs we interact with, they find it very difficult. So it's not an easy process to change the whole system over. Yeah, Radhika?
No, the marketing question.
Okay, Radhika, you please answer that marketing question. Dr. Upadhayay supplemented to that international organizations question.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
sorry.
Radhika, please address to the second question. Yeah.
Could you? What the question is? How they are using?
What is the priority of marketing strategy in Indian CSR?
So the priority of marketing strategy is very interesting. All they are doing is, coming up with those fancy reports and sending off corp communication people or HR people to the conferences and speaking about it, right? One is that typology. The other is actually people who are doing great impact, who are actually bringing impact, who are actually strengthening the NGOs at the ground level, who are actually talking about using digital innovative platforms. We have people from the nudge and they are very, very innovative in their own communication. So for me, the marketing, and it's a little bit of a gimmick also. And I think it's high times that the real professionals should take care of this portfolio. No longer CSR should be like the 4th or the 5th portfolios. I've been stating that for long, done by either the communication, marketing people, and then they put CSR/sustainability. I still never get that. What I'm trying to say is that let's focus on impact briefs, number one. Let's come up with innovative platforms. What exactly are you doing? How many NGOs at the grassroots levels you have strengthened? Because that's the real work on ground. And the impact, the scale of partnerships that you have brought forth. So let's focus on that. Conferences and all are very important. I'm not denying that, but it needs to change because the young people are very innovative in their.
So, very quick question related to this. Should CSR be oriented to economic benefits of the organization? Yes or no? Noshir.
Legally, it cannot be. Legally, it cannot be. Sustainability is, because one of your questions was that if the beneficiary of a skill development project person can be brought back into the company, right? In principle, in sustainable business case, that's what a project should look like. That could be your beneficiaries, but legally, in terms of reporting and all, you cannot bring the profits back to the company. It's going to be
true. But should CSR be conceptualized considering the economic benefit of the company also or not?
In Western countries, it has always been seen as CSR as enlightened self-interest, that it somewhere brings indirectly. I mean, the entire idea of CSR is that it helps branding, it brings value to the company, people see it in the right light. So, but I mean, it should not be the key driver. CSR is ultimately, remember the acronym, what does it stand for? It is a social responsibility that a company takes on. And yes, if it indirectly brings economic benefits in terms of better branding, better value for the organization, I'm not against it, but it should not be a direct economic benefit. There is something in law which we know as something that happens incidentally because you do something. So because of CSR, it incidentally brings greater economic prosperity for your company. I'm happy for it because that's the real essence of CSR.
Thank you. Thank you, Noshir. Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, Dr. Upadhayay. Thank you, Manoj, Priya, the entire team of Socio Story. I'm really sorry, my awesome audience. I cannot take other questions looking at the time constraint. Please post your questions right here in the chat. Also offline to the link provided or to the mail of Manoj. Manoj, if you can also share maybe one number where people can come out with their queries, and offline, please take 3 days to respond to all the questions which is there in this platform to address. And thank you so much everyone joining in. I would like to congratulate Socio Story for organizing it so successfully, and we'll be in touch. Let's look forward. In this COVID-19 situation, we all have the responsibility to adhere to the government's guidelines. Let's not go out. Let's make others also aware about following the guidelines issued by the government. Stay safe, stay healthy. With this, we end it right here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Praveen, for conducting it so well. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Upadhayay. Bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Pleasure.